Welcome back to Counting the Cost. China needs to decide next year whether to introduce another stimulus package to create much-needed jobs. But there are concerns that China's last attempt to boost economic growth could sow the seeds of a future financial crisis. With more on this, it's over to Harry Fawcett in our Kuala Lumpur Broadcast Centre.
As the global financial crisis accelerated, China decided to underpin its growth and stimulate domestic demand with a $586 billion spending package. But there are concerns that some of that money went into propelling a stock market rally. The Shanghai Composite Index has soared more than 100% since a low in October last year. Property prices have also doubled. China also set its banks a target of lending $730 billion in 2009. That target has already been surpassed, and then some. Banks have lent more than $1.1 trillion in the first half of this year. Despite the billions already spent, officials are concerned that 3 million college graduates are yet to find work and that about 23 million migrant workers lost their jobs in late 2008. But more money could backfire as loans go bad, damaging China's growth in the future. Joining me now from Singapore is Jim Rogers, the legendary investor, commodities guru and co-founder of the Quantum Fund. Thanks very much for joining us on Counting the Cost, Mr. Rogers. You've made a bit of a habit, a lucrative one at that, of going against the crowd. So presumably these numbers coming out of China aren't something that attracts you as an investor.
Well, Harry, the Chinese stock market has doubled in the last 9 or 10 months. I don't like to jump on a train that's moving that fast, so I'm not getting involved. Yes, I see what the Chinese government is doing. I'm seeing they're spending a lot of money, and some of it's going into the markets. At the moment, I'm just watching. I bought shares back in the collapse in the fall, in October, November, but nothing since.
So does this amount to a bubble and one that's being supported by Chinese stimulus spending?
I would hardly call it a bubble. No. I mean, the Chinese stock market is still maybe nearly 50% below its all-time high, so it's hard to call it a bubble. There is a lot of money being forced into the system, but that's true of all over the world, Europe, America, everywhere. China's spending their money more intelligently, it seems, than other countries, but it's not. I wouldn't call it a bubble yet. As in a year or two or three, sure, but not now.
The United States wanted China, among other things, to stimulate consumer demand and help the world recover in that way. It seems that China's spending it on infrastructure, and indeed some of this lending appears to be going into the stock market. That's not perhaps what some of the doctors in the global economy had ordered.
Well, anecdotally, we hear that some of it may be going into the stock market. I have no way of knowing. I suspect some of it is, because there's so much money sloshing around the world these days. Yes, the United States is telling China that they should spend more for consumption. But, Harry, the idea that the United States can tell anybody how to run their economy is just ludicrous. I mean, here the United States has run up gigantic debts, the largest debtor nation in the world, gotten itself into a horrible, horrible bond. Who would listen to them as a source of advice for how to run an economy? Certainly not me. China's done a brilliant job of saving and investing over the past 30 years. They're doing more of it, spending on infrastructure and building for the future. That's the way to build an economy, not the way the Americans are doing it.
And there's still talk of a second Chinese stimulus plan, perhaps next year. Do you think that's a realistic proposition?
Well, it could be. Of course, anything's a realistic proposition if things slow down dramatically. China, as you know, Harry, China's been saving its money for a rainy day. They've got the largest foreign currency reserves in the world. Now it's raining, and they're starting to spend some of those foreign currency reserves in an intelligent manner. If things do slow down again, I suspect they'll spend some more of them. By the way, it wouldn't surprise me at all if you didn't see problems in the world economy next year or the year after. But China is better placed than most countries because China has these huge reserves, as do other countries in Asia. It's not just China.
Well, exactly. Let's broaden this out beyond China. And earlier in the program, we were hearing about a rebounding of fortunes for European banks. Just a year after we were told that the whole system was on the verge of collapse and huge amounts of money have been pumped in to try and bail these banks out. As an opponent of that bailout process, what do you make of these big profits that are rolling in now?
Well, there's no question you give all these people billions of dollars or billions of pounds, and they're going to take advantage of opportunities, as they should. I mean, somebody has to take advantage of opportunities, or the whole system will never rebuild. Now, yes, I was very much against and still am against the bailouts, but at least if they give them the money, they give them the money so they can make some more money to rebuild their balance sheets. That, at least, is a good thing. But philosophically, the whole thing is a sham, and in the end, it's going to cause us more problems than it helps.
Well, certainly it's going to stick in the craw of a lot of taxpayers who themselves have been hurting from this crisis and whose money has gone into bailing these banks out, either directly or systemically. Even the ones that haven't been given direct money have benefited from the bailing out of the system. Doesn't that require some sort of windfall tax, some sort of payback by the banks to the public money that's gone into them?
Well, I'm a taxpayer, and I am outraged at what the American government, anyway, I'm not a taxpayer in the UK, I'm outraged at what the American government has done. People should be outraged at the UK. Yes, there should be some kind of payoff for the taxpayers. Again, the banks got the money so they could take advantage of opportunities and make more money to rebuild themselves. But in the end, since they were saved by, whoever saved them should get some of the benefits from that, whether it's equity ownership, I mean return on the equity or whatever. The idea of you just give somebody a free lunch in the end destroys us all.
So has any government, has any central bank done a good job at handling this? Who's done best?
I can see no, well, the Chinese have done better than most, but no, I can see no, maybe the Singapore central bank, but other than places like Singapore, China, I don't see anybody who's done it, any central bank that's done a good job. Most of them have printed huge amounts of money. Most of them have taken on lots of extra debt onto their balance sheets. Most of them have fallen into the path of doing it the easy way rather than being disciplined and doing what's necessary.
The end of the alphabet has been used extensively in trying to describe this crisis, whether it be a U-shape, a V-shape, a W-shaped crisis in terms of whether it's going to be recovering quickly or not. How close do you think we are to the bottom, or are we indeed on an upslope now, do you think?
Well, 2009 will probably be a better year than 2008, purely because 2008 was such a disaster, and 2009 benefits from gigantic amounts of money being spent by governments and central banks. 2010 or 2011 is probably going to be worse again, because it's great, Harry, if you get a lot of money that the government gives to you, but remember, it's got to come from somewhere. You got to take the money from somewhere over here, and eventually these people that you're taking the money from, either in the form of borrowings or taxing or printing, going to cause problems. So the situation is not over yet. We're going to have more problems in the next year or two or three, because somebody's going to have to pay the piper for all of this easy money which has been thrown into the system.
Okay, Jim Rogers, on that note, thank you very much for joining us from Singapore today on Counting the Cost.
An investigation into Brazil's biggest company may bring down the country's current government. Opposition parties called for the probe following accusations of corruption and mismanagement. Shihab Ratanzi in our Washington, D.C. centre has more.
Brazil's best-known company, Petrobras, is being investigated for evading up to $2.4 billion in taxes. The world's third-largest oil company is already in trouble after struggling to meet output targets and finance a spending plan. It's thought the inquiry might unearth serious budget mismanagement has damaged Petrobras' profits. So, what does this mean for this massive oil giant? Gabriel Elizondo has more.
Many people here in Brazil will be watching very closely over the next coming days and weeks over what happens with these developments relating to Petrobras. One of those people is joining me now, Ildo Sauer, who was a director of Petrobras for many years, and now you're back here at the University of Sao Paulo teaching. The first question I wanted to ask you is just, Petrobras is a company that's 50.1% owned by the government. So my question is, with presidential elections next year, how much of this investigation do you think is politically motivated?
There
are two main issues at the core of this investigation. First, there will be an election next year, and Petrobras has been extremely important in the execution of public policy within the Lula government. The opposition may simply want to find a way to collect facts that they can use in the campaign next year. The second point, I think, is fundamental. It has to do with the fact that Petrobras has found new deep oil reserves within Brazilian waters that are a new global frontier in oil exploration. It is not known if it's 30 billion, 100 billion, or 300 billion barrels, making it the biggest reserve of oil in the world. So there are internal and external forces that want to reduce the role of Petrobras in the new oil frontier and see this inquiry as a way to do it.
Let me ask you this as the final question. This is an important time for Petrobras because they just announced in the last year or two that they found major new untapped oil reserves off the coast of Brazil. The question is, given this investigation, what do you think is the future of Petrobras in the short term and long term?
Primeiro, a Petrobras, de fato, cumpriu papel importante na história brasileira.
Petrobras has had a very important role in the history of Brazil, taking oil to all corners of the country. The company made Brazil self-sufficient in oil in 2006, and in 2007, as you say, revealed the possibility of new deep-water untapped oil fields, a new frontier of oil. Petrobras will come out of this inquiry stronger with the capacity to answer to each and every question. Transparency will increase within the company, and the company will be able to fulfill its role of extraordinary growth that it has had in the past years. That growth of Petrobras did not happen because of the increase in price of oil, but because of the company's strategic look for more reserves in deep water and its investment in the area of natural gas and biofuels. It is a pioneer in the world, so Petrobras will come out stronger because of this process.
Petrobras deverá sair fortalecida desse processo.
Thanks for your perspective.
You're welcome.
Clearly, no matter what happens with this investigation, one thing is very clear: Petrobras will remain one of the biggest and most profitable companies in all of the world, and the biggest company here in Brazil. Gabriel Elizondo, Al Jazeera, Sao Paulo.
Well, don't forget you can keep up to date with these and other stories on our website, aljazeera.net/English. Click on the left-hand side for the business page. And that's it from me, Lauren Taylor, this week on Counting the Cost. Thanks for watching.